We're moving on now to the I-Alef special case verbs, and we have examples 11 through 15. And the special case verbs, the number of verbs is relatively small. I've listed them over here on the right: amar, akal, avad, afa, and ava, and occasionally achaz. The top three are the ones that show up the most often. The last two are uncommon verbs for the most part anyway, and even less common in the cal imperfect. It's the cal imperfect where we run into problems. Otherwise, these verbs and other verbs with aleph in the R1 letter behave pretty much like other one guttural verbs. So it's worth looking at these special cases because they show up quite commonly, certainly amar and akal, and avad to a lesser extent. For example, the one form here, the vav consecutive imperfect 3ms, vayomer, shows up over 2,000 times in the Hebrew Bible. You will see it so often that you won't even pay a whole lot of attention to the fact that it's a special case verb. One example of a non-imperfect verb where there's some funny things going on is for the cal infinitive construct of amar with lamed, we get lemor. And this shows up over 900 times. It just means saying, and it's oftentimes used before reported speech. So these two forms show up a lot, and again, you'll get used to them. Down here in the bottom right, there's a few places where the I-Alefs can cause problems. The cal imperfect 1cs is kind of a funny form because the normal aleph you would see as your prefix vowel, so we'd expect to see an aleph followed by an aleph. One of the alephs gets dropped out, and so we have ochal as our cal imperfect 1cs. Notice how similar that is to the cal active participle, ochel. This follows the normal cal participle vowels. So this cal imperfect is just sort of an odd form that you need to be aware of. Similarly down here, omar, cal imperfect 1cs, as compared to omer, the active participle. So not a big deal, but something that you may see periodically, and you just need to be aware of these special cases. Okay, let's look at some examples. We have tochal, tochal. So we see that the akal here, the tav tells us immediately that we have prefix vowel from the imperfect, and that holum there reminds us that we're looking at one of these special case verbs. Since we know it's an imperfect already, so we know it's cal imperfect, and then the tav with no imperfect ending tells us we're looking at 2ms or 3fs. And of course we just have akal as our root, and that would just be you or she will eat. Number 12, similarly we have yovedu. Here again we see the aleph is quiesced, and we have this interesting holum here, and the yod tells us we're looking at an imperfect prefix. So again, cal imperfect. The nice thing about these is that once you know the special cases and you see this sort of odd behavior, you're pretty sure it's a cal imperfect. So yovedu, cal imperfect, in this case yod prefix, third masculine. The shurik ending tells us it's plural, and then we have avad, and this would be they will perish. They will perish. Number 13, here's an example where it's not a cal imperfect, and so just to illustrate that in other cases the I-Alefs look a lot like one gutturals. So here we have ha-achil, and the hey prefix with the patach is telling us that we're looking at a hifil. Now we might be tempted to think of this as a hifil perfect where the hirik has been changed to a patak as a reflection of the hatef patak, but remember that the hifil perfects and nifal perfects in the one gutturals take a sagol. And so this is a case where we're looking at a true patak, and that true patak is indicating that we have something below the imperfects that would indicate either a imperative, infinitive construct, and because of our theme vowel being hirik yod, we're looking at an infinitive construct. So we have a hifil infinitive construct of achal, and the hifil of this verb means to feed, and so the infinitive construct feeding or to feed is how we would translate that. 14, hane'echelet. Hane'echelet. The hay with the patak might make us think hifil initially, but notice the dagesh forte, and then we also see our root here is achal. So this means that the noon here is a prefix of the verb, and the hay ends up being then a definite article. So you get the hay patak with the dagesh forte, that's your definite article. And then the ending here, this seglet looking ending, this elet ending, is our classic T form of the feminine singular participle. So we have the noon prefix, that's our nafal prefix, participle, feminine singular, and then we have our root achal. We would have one who is eaten, or if we're talking about a sacrifice, something non-human, a thing that is eaten, and then of course the definite article makes it the one that is eaten, the thing that is eaten. Finally, let's look at number 15 here, ye'achalu. Ye'achalu. Here's another case where we're not looking at a kal imperfect, and so it acts like a one guttural. And so we have the sere. We're looking either at a sagol or a hirik that was lengthened, and normally with a yod prefix we won't be looking at a sagol, we'll be looking at a hirik. So we have a tsere indicating a original hirik prefix, and the lengthening indicates that this was doubled. We can't double an aleph, but let's just pretend here. And then we have our R1 vowel is a comets, and so all of these put together indicate a nafal, and that is an imperfect. The yod tells us it's third masculine, and then we have a shurek ending. That imperfect ending tells us third masculine plural, and again achal. So we have they were eaten, probably referring to sacrifices were eaten. They were eaten. So that takes care of our I-Alef verbs for this set of exercises.